Now, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson and United Nations Secretary-General António Guterres were back at COP26 today. This as representatives from nearly 200 countries continue with discussions on climate change in Glasgow, Scotland. The United Nations Climate Agency published a first draft of the political decision likely to be used at the end of the summit on Friday. Our senior reporter, Siphamandla Goge, is in Glasgow. He joins us now live. So, Sipa, Boris Johnson and the UN Secretary-General are back at the summit today. Is this actually going to put any pressure on negotiators to come up with a deal? Okay, I don't think Siphamandla is able to hear me, but he has spoken to several people there in Glasgow. Take a listen.
Well, there's really two vibes here. In the South African pavilion, there's a lot of positivity, certainly about what was announced last week, the political declaration. But you're right. In terms of the larger overall UN conference here and finding a common text, there's certainly been, I think, a lot of problems. A lot of problems getting to a 1.5 degrees warming, how much pressure to put on countries around that. Also, wider commitments on things like coal, particularly coming out. We should remember South Africa's done pretty well on that front, though, in terms of the NDCs align with 1.5 degrees. But no, this is really a question for the UK, for the UN, with the big emitters. And South Africa, I think, is somewhat ahead of the curve now in terms of where the text may well come out.
All right, let's pick up with Siphamandla Goge in Glasgow. Sipa, I guess the next question is, what happens if there's no deal at COP26? Yeah, we're obviously having audio issues there, but Siphamandla did speak to another expert to answer that question. So let's take a listen.
Well, I suppose it's who is it a disappointment for if there isn't a deal. Certainly globally, I think it makes it harder. It makes it harder for investors dealing with high emitters, say, to see clarity and to see a pathway. But remember, in South Africa, there are so many reasons to decarbonise, particularly the energy industry. It's not just carbon, it's also sulphur emissions. It's also maximising employment as well. So there's a whole load of reasons for South Africa to keep with its programme, even if we do end up not getting quite the deal we would like at a global level.
All right, so the next question, of course, at this summit is what happens with the 130 billion rand from rich nations to support South Africa's just transition? Let's take a listen.
South Africa came here looking for money, and it has got a pledge. And I think other countries certainly are viewing that with a little bit of surprise, a little bit of envy maybe as well. But really is credit to the South African team of negotiators, particularly ESCOM, who is here. But no, I mean, now is the really challenging part. There is a lot of woolliness in the political declaration, as you'd expect from a political document. Now in the actual discussions, and particularly the financial, technical discussions, the conditionality, the terms of the lending, that's really where things like can ESCOM do its own renewables program comes out, things like the pace of decommissioning really comes out. And there are disagreements. I think the South African maybe story doesn't fully understand this at the moment. There are disagreements between, say, Germany and France and the UK and the US over those sorts of questions. And this is where it gets very complicated. It's going to take quite a while. But we should remember they're currently signaling it may take a year or so to sign an actual funding agreement. But in reality, a lot of this money is needed up front. ESCOM is starting decommissioning, of course, its first plant from October next year.
All right, so Siphamandla telling us earlier that the African group of ministers obviously pushing hard for some commitments, particularly on climate finance. Here's the Environmental Affairs Minister, Barbara Creasy.
The African group had a meeting today or yesterday with the facilitators, and I think that we did explain that for us, a share of proceeds under item 6.2 is very important for the African continent, because this is the area that gives us a sustainable and predictable means of financing for adaptation. And you would know that developing countries generally are worried about financing for adaptation. I think from the point of view of the African continent, we don't like a situation where we're forced to beg for finance for adaptation. And so a share of proceeds is a really important aspect. I think today the facilitators were listening to the perspectives of different countries, so it was really just a feedback session. We also shared with them that we are in favour of a robust accounting mechanism. We don't want to see double counting, and I think that we're very hesitant to accept a situation where there would be transfer of units from the pre-Paris area unless somebody can suggest an appropriate compromise on that issue.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. Siphamandla Goge is live for us in Glasgow. We'll get updates from him throughout the week, because that ends on Friday.